1942, a German pilot was about to die. His plane was burning. His wingman was already gone. He had been awake for 36 hours. He should have been physically incapable of flying. He should have made the small mistake that ends a fighter pilot's life, but he did not. He flew for another 4 hours. He shot down 2 enemy aircraft. He landed his crippled plane back at base and walked away from it as if it were a Sunday drive. The reason he survived was not skill. It was not luck. It was not training. It was a small white pill the German military issued to its pilots, soldiers, sailors, and tank crews by the millions. The Germans called it Pervitin. The Americans, watching from across the ocean, took notice. And by the end of the war, the United States military had not just copied the German formula. They had made it stronger, distributed it wider, and brought it home, to pharmacies, to doctors' offices, to the kitchens of American housewives who had no idea that the pill helping them lose weight and clean the house was the same chemical that had powered the German blitzkrieg. How did methamphetamine, one of the most destructive drugs in American history, become a legal, prescribed, government-approved pharmaceutical that was sold openly in American pharmacies for over 30 years? How did the United States government not only allow this, but actively encourage it, distributing the drug to its own soldiers in 2 wars and looking the other way while pharmaceutical companies pushed it onto American mothers? That is the question we are going to answer today. And the answer involves Nazis, Allied soldiers, the United States Air Force, the Food and Drug Administration, suburban housewives, and a public health disaster that has been almost completely erased from the way we talk about America's relationship with drugs. This is Dark Remedy, and if you have not yet seen our investigations into MK Ultra and the Pont Saint-Esprit poisoning, you should pause this video, watch those 2 first, and come back, because what you are about to hear connects to both of them in ways most Americans have never heard. To understand how methamphetamine ended up in American medicine cabinets, you have to go back to a Berlin laboratory in 1937. A pharmacist named Fritz Hauschild, working at the Temmler-Werke pharmaceutical company, synthesized a compound based on earlier work by Japanese chemists who had isolated methamphetamine from ephedra plants in 1893. Hauschild's version was stronger, more pure, and easier to manufacture at scale. Temmler called the new product Pervitin and brought it to market in 1938 as a general-purpose stimulant. The drug was sold over the counter at every German pharmacy. You did not need a prescription. You did not need a doctor. You walked in, paid your money, and walked out with what was, in chemical terms, pure methamphetamine in tablet form. The German public loved it. Truck drivers used it to stay awake on long hauls. Students used it to study for exams. Housewives used it to clean their homes more energetically. Office workers used it to push through the afternoon slump. Doctors prescribed it for depression, weight loss, and what was then called neurasthenia, a vague condition that essentially meant feeling tired and unmotivated. The German military took notice almost immediately. The Wehrmacht's medical command realized that a drug that could keep a person awake, alert, fearless, and aggressive for hours at a time was not a stimulant. It was a weapon. By 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, the military had begun ordering Pervitin in industrial quantities. By the time Germany invaded France in 1940, soldiers and pilots were carrying tubes of 30 tablets in their standard issue gear. Tank crews were taking the drug to stay awake during multi-day advances. Pilots were taking it before missions to sharpen reflexes. Infantrymen were taking it during forced marches that should have been impossible to complete. The German Blitzkrieg, the lightning-fast invasion that overwhelmed France in 6 weeks and shocked the world, was not just a triumph of tactical innovation. It was, in significant part, a triumph of pharmaceutical engineering. German soldiers were marching faster, fighting longer, and sleeping less than any human army had ever done before. They were doing it because they were chemically modified. By 1940, German military doctors were writing internal reports warning that Pervitin was dangerous. Soldiers were collapsing from exhaustion after the drug wore off. Some were having psychotic breaks. Others were becoming addicted and unable to function without it. The reports were filed and largely ignored. The drug was working too well, and Germany was at war. Hitler himself was being injected with methamphetamine and other compounds by his personal physician, Theodor Morell, almost daily. By the end of the war, Hitler was a wreck of a human being, shaking, paranoid, his mind disintegrating. His body kept functioning only by an endless rotation of injected stimulants. But none of this stopped the use of Pervitin in the German ranks. From 1939 to 1945, the German military distributed an estimated 200 million Pervitin tablets to its forces. 200 million. That is one of the largest distributions of methamphetamine in human history, and it was happening on a continent at war with the United States. The Allies were paying attention. American intelligence officers debriefing captured German soldiers heard the same story over and over. They had been given pills. The pills had made them feel invincible. The pills had let them go without sleep for days. Allied military doctors examined captured Pervitin tablets, identified the active compound, and reported back to Washington. The conclusion was simple. Whatever the moral concerns, the United States could not afford to let German soldiers fight on methamphetamine while American soldiers fought without it. By 1942, the United States military had begun issuing its own version of the drug, manufactured under the brand name Benzedrine, to American pilots, paratroopers, and infantry. By the end of the war, the U.S. military had distributed an estimated 180 million amphetamine tablets to American forces. Not quite as many as the Germans, but close. American bomber crews flying long missions over Europe were given the pills before takeoff. Marines fighting in the Pacific were given them before island assaults. Soldiers in Europe were given them on long marches. The American war effort, like the German war effort, was running on amphetamines, and almost no American at home knew about it. When the war ended in 1945, millions of American soldiers came home. They came home with luggage, with souvenirs, with stories, and with a chemical dependency. Many of them had been on Benzedrine or methadrine, the brand name for medical methamphetamine, for years. They were addicted. The military, embarrassed and unwilling to publicly acknowledge what it had done, simply sent them home and let them figure it out. Some did, many did not. Veterans began visiting their family doctors, complaining of fatigue, depression, and difficulty adjusting to civilian life. Their doctors, often unaware of what the men had been taking during the war, prescribed them what was readily available at the pharmacy. They prescribed them more amphetamines, the same drug, now in civilian dosage, in civilian packaging, marketed to a civilian audience. And here is where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. The pharmaceutical companies that had been manufacturing methamphetamine and amphetamine for the military during the war now had massive production capacity and no military customer. The war was over. They needed a new market. So they invented one. They began marketing amphetamine and methamphetamine under brand names like Benzedrine, Dexedrine, Methadrine, and Desoxin directly to American civilians as a cure for almost everything you can imagine: depression, weight loss, fatigue, mild headaches, difficulty concentrating, hyperactivity in children, menopause symptoms. Even alcoholism was treated by giving patients methamphetamine to help them stop drinking. The advertisements were cheerful, colorful, and aggressive. They appeared in medical journals and women's magazines alike. By 1949, American doctors were writing millions of prescriptions for amphetamines every year. By 1962, that number had grown to over 8 billion tablets prescribed annually. To put that in perspective, that was approximately 1 amphetamine tablet for every adult American every week for an entire year. The primary market was women, specifically suburban housewives. The pharmaceutical industry had identified what they considered the perfect customer: a woman in her 30s or 40s, married, with children, increasingly bored or unhappy with her life, gaining weight, feeling tired, looking for a solution. Doctors began prescribing amphetamines to these women under brand names like Obertrol, Escatrol, and Dixamil. The pills were marketed as appetite suppressants, but they did far more than suppress appetite. They produced euphoria. They produced energy. They produced the feeling in a generation of American women trapped in unfulfilling domestic roles that they were finally alive, and they were intensely, brutally addictive. Millions of American women became dependent on prescription methamphetamine without ever understanding that the drug they were taking was the same drug that had powered the Nazi war machine. Their husbands did not know. Their children did not know. Often, their doctors did not even fully understand what they were prescribing. The pills were just pills. The doctor said they were safe. The pharmacy filled the prescription without question. And so for over 20 years, an entire generation of American women medicated themselves into a chemical haze using one of the most addictive substances ever synthesized. Take a moment with that. Stop and think about what you just heard, because if you're watching this, your grandmother or your great-grandmother may have been one of these women. The image we have of the perfect 1950s American housewife, energetic, slim, smiling, perfectly groomed, immaculately housekeeping, was for millions of women not the result of dedication or virtue. It was the result of methamphetamine, and almost nobody talks about this. If this video has shown you something you did not know, hit the like button right now. It tells the algorithm this story matters. And subscribe so you do not miss the next investigation. We are going deeper into America's hidden history every single week. The damage from this era is almost impossible to calculate. Hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, of Americans became addicted to amphetamines during the period from 1945 to 1971. Some recovered, many did not. The drug damaged hearts, destroyed marriages, contributed to suicides, and left a generation of women dependent on a substance their doctors had told them was harmless. The federal government did almost nothing for over 20 years. The pharmaceutical industry was politically powerful profits were enormous, and the public did not understand what was happening. It took until 1965 for Congress to begin restricting amphetamine prescriptions. It took until 1971 for the Controlled Substances Act to formally schedule methamphetamine and amphetamine as drugs of abuse, restricting them dramatically. By the time the law caught up to the reality, the damage was done. An entire chapter of American medical history had been rewritten in chemicals, and the country has spent the last 50 years trying to forget that it ever happened. But the story does not end in 1971, because methamphetamine did not disappear, it just moved. When the prescription pipeline was cut off, the demand was already there. Millions of Americans were physically and psychologically dependent. The criminal underground stepped in. Motorcycle gangs in California began manufacturing methamphetamine illegally in the late 1960s. By the 1980s, illegal methamphetamine production was a major criminal enterprise across the American West. By the 1990s, it had spread to the rural Midwest and the South. The methamphetamine epidemic that has devastated rural America for the last 3 decades, the trailer park labs, the meth mouth, the orphaned children, the burned out small towns, all of it traces back, in part, to a public appetite for the drug that had been deliberately created and cultivated by American pharmaceutical companies and the United States government during and after World War II. The dealers did not invent the demand, the doctors did, the pharmacies did, the advertisements did. By the time the criminal market took over, an entire generation had already been taught that methamphetamine was a normal, helpful, even healthy part of American life. The market was waiting. The cooks just had to show up. Today, methamphetamine remains one of the most destructive drugs in the United States. It kills more Americans annually than cocaine. It is cheaper than ever, more pure than ever, and easier to obtain than ever. Mexican cartels have industrialized its production at a scale that dwarfs anything the prescription industry ever achieved. Rural communities continue to be hollowed out by addiction. Children continue to be removed from homes where their parents are using. Hospitals continue to receive overdose patients in numbers that are climbing every year, and almost nobody connects these modern realities to the pharmaceutical era that created them. The story has been quietly forgotten. The companies that made billions of dollars selling methamphetamine to American housewives moved on, rebranded, and now sell entirely different products. Some of them, the same companies, are still household names today. They are not eager to be reminded of what they once did. Tell me in the comments, did you know any of these? Did you have a grandmother or great-grandmother who took diet pills in the 1950s or 1960s? Did anyone in your family come back from World War II with a problem nobody could explain? This story is more personal to American families than almost anyone realizes, and the more we talk about it, the harder it becomes to let it stay buried. In 1942, a German pilot survived an impossible mission because he was flying on methamphetamine. We started here. By 1945, every major military on Earth was using the same drug to give its soldiers an edge. By 1955, the same drug was sitting in medicine cabinets in every suburb in America. By 1971, when the United States government finally admitted what it had been allowing for 30 years, An entire generation had already been broken by it. We have spent the last 3 videos on this channel investigating how the United States government experimented on its own people, poisoned an allied nation, and drugged its own soldiers. There is a pattern here. The justification is always the same. National security, the greater good, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and the result is always the same. People who trusted the system are the ones who pay. The people who designed the system never do. Hitler died in a bunker, but his pharmacist died at home, peacefully in retirement. The German pilot from the opening of this video, the one who survived the impossible mission on Pervitin, his name was Heinz Beer. He survived the war. He flew commercial aircraft after Germany surrendered. He died in 1957 at the age of 44 in a small plane crash he likely should have been able to avoid. The official cause was pilot error. Some have wondered ever since whether the war ever really ended for him, whether the chemicals that kept him alive in 1942 were still affecting his brain in 1957. We will never know. He took his answers with him. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. This story is one of the harder ones we have told, because it is not about a single villain or a single program. It is about an entire system that decided for 30 years that it was acceptable to chemically alter the population of the United States in pursuit of profit and convenience. The next video on this channel goes deeper into one of the families that built fortunes during this era. A family whose name still appears on hospital wings and museum buildings around the world. A family that, decades later, would do it all over again with a different drug. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Hit the like button if this story changed how you see the history you grew up with. And tell me in the comments what your family knows about this era that history books left out. This is Dark Remedy. The truth is always darker than the official story, and we are just getting started.